It started with a simple mistake, or so they thought. A white officer stopped a black man, assuming he was just another easy target, another person who would stay silent. But what he didn't know, that man wasn't just anyone. And by the time the truth came out, it was too late to take it back. These are stories I've looked into, with the victims' names changed to protect their identities. I want to tell them not like news reports, but as real stories that carry important lessons, like the simple truth. Never underestimate anyone. Before we dive in, let me know, what time is it where you are, and where are you watching from today? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. It started like any ordinary stop. Nothing loud, nothing violent. Just flashing lights in a rearview mirror, and the long sigh of a man who'd seen this before. Malik Thompson pulled his old pickup truck to the curb. The engine rumbled, then quieted. He kept his hands on the steering wheel, 10 and 2. Always 10 and 2. That's what his father taught him. That's what he'd taught his own nephew. The side mirror reflected two officers approaching, both white. One older, mid-50s, moving like a man who thought the world owed him obedience. The other younger, maybe late 20s, eyes sharp but uncertain. Malik glanced at the glove box, where his registration sat. He didn't reach for it. The older cop knocked on the window. Malik rolled it down. "Evening," Malik said calmly. The officer didn't respond to the greeting. His eyes swept over Malik, then dropped to the old truck, the peeling paint, the rust spots. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" the officer asked. "Driving to my mother's house. She lives 2 blocks from here." The officer smirked. "Your mother lives around here?" Malik nodded. "Yes." The younger cop stood a few steps back, hand resting near his belt, fingers close to the taser. "I'm going to need your license and registration." Malik kept his voice even. "License is in my back pocket. Registration's in the glove box. May I reach for them?" The older cop frowned slowly. Malik moved deliberately. No sudden motions. No surprises. As he handed over the documents, the officer tilted his head. "You know, a truck like this doesn't really belong in this part of town." Malik smiled faintly. "I guess it does now." The officer didn't like that answer. The younger cop shifted, glancing between Malik and his partner. The older cop read the license. "Malik Thompson. And what do you do for a living, Mr. Thompson?" Malik paused. That question didn't have anything to do with traffic law. "I run a tech consulting business," he said simply. The older cop snorted. "Tech, huh? Sure you do." Malik didn't respond. He'd heard that tone before. That mocking disbelief. The assumption that a black man driving an old truck couldn't possibly own a successful business, let alone one that worked with government contracts. "You got anything in the vehicle we should know about?" the officer asked. "No." "Step out of the vehicle." Malik blinked. "Excuse me?" "Step out of the vehicle. Now." The younger cop looked surprised but didn't say anything. Malik unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out. He stood tall, calm, shoulders relaxed, hands visible. The older cop circled the truck, peering through the windows. "Mind if we take a look inside?" "I do mind," Malik said evenly. "Unless you have probable cause or a warrant." The officer's smile disappeared. "Refusing a search, are we?" "I'm exercising my rights." The younger officer shifted again. His eyes betrayed uncertainty. He wasn't expecting this to escalate, but the older cop had already made up his mind. "Put your hands on the hood." Malik stayed still. "Officer, I've complied fully. There's no reason." The older cop stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think you're smarter than me? Hiding behind big words and fancy talk?" Malik didn't answer, because he already knew what this was. Not about safety. Not about law. This was about ego. About being seen as less. The older officer grabbed Malik's arm and turned him toward the truck. Hands on the hood. Malik placed his palms flat against the metal, cold against his skin. The younger cop looked uneasy but said nothing. As the older officer began patting him down, Malik spoke softly. "Officer, are you sure this is the path you want to take?" That froze the man, just for a moment. But pride wouldn't let him stop now. "I don't take advice from criminals." Malik smiled, just slightly. "I'm not a criminal. But you may want to call your supervisor before this goes any further." The older cop sneered. "Is that a threat?" "No," Malik replied. "That's a courtesy." Before the officer could respond, his radio crackled. A dispatcher's voice cut through the night air. "Unit 12, we have a supervisor requesting status on a Mr. Malik Thompson. Immediate response required." The older cop frowned. "What the?" The younger officer reached for his shoulder mic. "Unit 12. Subject detained for vehicle check. No issues so far." There was a pause. Then the dispatcher's tone changed. "Release him immediately. Subject is clear. Do not engage further. Supervisor en route." The older cop's face paled. Malik turned his head slightly. "I tried to warn you." Before the officers could process what was happening, an unmarked black SUV pulled up alongside the scene. A tall woman stepped out, white shirt, dark slacks, badge clipped to her belt. "Federal." She approached with authority. "Officers, this stop is terminated. You will hand back Mr. Thompson's documents and step away." The older cop stammered. Who are you?" The agent held up her ID. "Homeland Security. Mr. Thompson is a contracted federal consultant, currently assisting in an active investigation. You've just made a very serious error." The younger officer stepped back immediately. The older cop's mouth opened, but no words came. Malik straightened his shoulders. "And next time, before you assume what someone is or isn't, you might want to ask." He took his license and registration, nodded politely to the federal agent, and walked calmly back to his truck. Behind him, the officers stood frozen, and the system they thought protected them? It had just shifted under their feet. The next morning, the headlines didn't mention Malik Thompson. And that was exactly how he wanted it. No press, no drama, just silence. Silence gave him room to move, to finish what he had started. At home, Malik sat at his kitchen table, coffee steaming beside a thick stack of folders. On his laptop screen, data scrolled, lists of complaints, incident reports, use of force records. His own system had flagged patterns months ago. Traffic stops in this neighborhood. Black drivers stop twice as often as white ones. Searches without cause. Arrests without charges. And two officers' names appeared over and over again, Sergeant Ray Collins and Officer Tyler Reed. The same two who had stopped him. But it wasn't just them. Malik's software was designed to find more than just individual offenders. It traced networks, connections, cover-ups. And this time, the data pointed to something bigger, a cluster of stops linked to a civil asset forfeiture fund. Cars, cash, property seized from people who were never convicted of any crime. The money, it was disappearing. On paper, it went into training programs and equipment budgets. In reality, it was going somewhere else. Malik clicked a folder marked Project Falcon. Inside were reports, spreadsheets, names. The local police department had a pattern. Officers stopped people they thought wouldn't fight back, people without connections, without power, without the means to sue. And Malik, he wasn't just a tech consultant. He was working under federal contract to expose this very operation. The stop the night before wasn't random. It was confirmation. They were getting bolder, and careless. He closed the laptop, took a deep breath. His phone buzzed. A text from Agent Ramirez. Your report verified. DOJ is moving forward. Expect pushback. Stay alert. Malik typed back. Understood. I'll be ready. At the same time, across town, Sergeant Collins was pacing his office. Tyler Reed sat nervously in the chair across from him. You told me it was a clean stop, Collins snapped. It was, until he started acting like some lawyer. Collins cursed under his breath. He wasn't acting like a lawyer. He was acting like someone who knew exactly how far he could push without crossing the line. Reed shook his head, but he looked uneasy. Collins cut him off. That's the problem. You thought he was just some average guy. He slammed a folder down on his desk. You profile people like him because they don't usually fight back. They don't usually have resources. But we screwed up. Reed swallowed. What do we do? Collins leaned forward, his face hard. We get ahead of it. We make him the problem before he makes us the problem. That afternoon, Malik pulled into his office parking lot. Nothing fancy. A small two-story building in a quiet part of the city. His company name wasn't even on the sign out front, just a suite number. Inside, his team was waiting. 3 people, diverse, young, sharp. Tasha, cybersecurity lead. Jared, data analyst. Nina, legal researcher. They didn't need explanations. They had access to the same data Malik did. They'd already reviewed the stop. Tasha was first to speak. You want us to lock everything down? Already done, Malik said. But now we go proactive. He pointed to the monitor behind him, where the Project Falcon data glowed. We have enough evidence to expose systemic abuse. But if we release it now, they'll spin it. Say it's a misunderstanding, a few bad apples. Jared nodded. So, what's the plan? We bait them, Malik replied. Tasha raised an eyebrow. You want to provoke them? No, Malik said. I want them to do what they've always done, treat someone like they think they're nobody. He paused. But this time, they'll pick the wrong person. Again. That evening, Malik went back to his mother's house. She greeted him with a hug that smelled of lavender and old family recipes. You're walking in with that face again, she said. What face? The one that says trouble's coming. Malik smiled. Trouble's already here. But it's not coming for me. His mother sighed. Just be careful. I will. She reached up and touched his cheek gently. You always think you can fix the world. Someone has to try. Across town, Collins was already laying his trap. He contacted a local reporter, fed him a story about Malik. Man who claims to be a tech consultant under federal protection actually linked to prior civil lawsuits. History of anti-police sentiment. A smear campaign. Old tactics. But Collins underestimated something. Malik wasn't just preparing a defense. He was preparing a counterattack. And this time, the eyes watching weren't just his team. Or even the Department of Justice. Community leaders were watching. Journalists who cared about the truth were watching. And most importantly, the system Collins thought he controlled, it was already turning against him. The next day, the story hit the news, but not the one Sergeant Collins had planned. Yes, the smear piece ran. A poorly written article, filled with speculation about Malik's past. Suggesting he was anti-police. That his tech work was shady. The usual tactics. But something unexpected happened. Within hours, community groups began speaking out. Not random individuals, respected voices. Church leaders. Small business owners. Parents whose children Malik had mentored in coding workshops. Veterans he had helped transition into tech jobs. Social media wasn't sharing the smear article. They were sharing their stories. He helped my son get his first job. He built free security systems for small businesses on our street. I've known Malik for 20 years. That man stands for integrity. The backlash against the smear was swift. And for Collins, it was a problem he didn't know how to handle. In his office, Collins slammed the article down on his desk. "What the hell is happening?" Officer Reed looked pale. "Sir, I think we underestimated who he knows." "You think?" Collins growled. "The whole point was that no one would back him up. That's why we picked him." Reed shifted uncomfortably. "What do we do now?" Collins leaned forward, lowering his voice. "We push harder. He has to slip up eventually. No one's perfect. But what if he doesn't?" Collins's eyes hardened. "Then we make him." Back at his office, Malik gathered his team. Tasha pulled up a new dataset. "We've tracked 2 of the officers involved in these illegal stops. Collins is one. The other is planning an unauthorized surveillance sweep tonight." Malik frowned. "On who?" "You," Jared added. "They flagged your vehicle. Set up an unofficial checkpoint route." Malik nodded slowly. "They want to rattle me. Make me look like I'm avoiding police or resisting." Nina looked concerned. "We could alert the DOJ now." "Shut it down." Malik shook his head. "Not yet. If they try to trap me, it'll give us what we need. Video, audio, proof of targeting." Tasha hesitated. "You're using yourself as bait." Malik smiled faintly. "I prefer to think of it as giving them a choice." He looked each of them in the eye. If they double down, they expose themselves. If they back off, they admit they're scared. Either way, we win. That night, Malik drove his old pickup down the route Tasha had discovered. Sure enough, 2 patrol cars were waiting near an intersection that wasn't on any public checkpoint list. The moment he passed the stop sign, lights flared behind him. Same routine. Same officers. But not the same outcome. This time, Malik had a dashboard camera running, one that streamed directly to a secure server. He also had 2 witnesses following discreetly in another vehicle, a local pastor and a retired judge. Both respected figures in the community. The officers approached. Sergeant Collins himself stepped out of one car. "Out of the vehicle, Mr. Thompson." Malik kept his hands visible. "What's the charge this time?" Collins sneered. "We'll discuss that after you step out." As Malik exited the truck, he kept his posture calm. Relaxed. He glanced toward the vehicle behind him. Both witnesses had already started recording. Collins hadn't noticed. He was too focused on trying to control the narrative. "You've been avoiding lawful stops," Collins accused. Malik raised an eyebrow. "I have. This is the only stop I've encountered, and it's not lawful. There are no posted checkpoint notices." Collins's face reddened. "Step away from the vehicle." Malik complied, still calm. "You're making a mistake, Sergeant." "That's where you're wrong," Collins replied. "The mistake was thinking you could play games with this department." Malik's smile didn't waver. "I'm not the one playing games." Across the street, more headlights appeared. An unmarked black SUV. The same federal agent from before, Agent Ramirez, stepped out. Behind her came 2 DOJ investigators and a local news crew, tipped off by Malik's team. The news crew wasn't holding back. Cameras rolled. Lights came on. The narrative shifted in an instant. Agent Ramirez approached. "Sergeant Collins, this stop is over. You and your officers are ordered to stand down. Collins's mouth opened. Closed. He looked like a man who'd prepared for a fistfight. And found himself at a press conference instead. Malik stood tall. I warned you once, he said softly. I won't have to warn you again. The DOJ investigators began reading Collins his rights. The news cameras caught every word. The younger officer, Reed, didn't resist. He simply dropped his flashlight and stepped away, eyes wide, realizing the storm had finally reached them. By morning, the headlines had flipped. Community leader targeted by police exposes corruption. Illegal traffic stops under federal investigation. DOJ intervenes in civil rights case. Malik Thompson, at the center. But for Malik, it wasn't about headlines. It was about momentum. The system had tried to break him twice. And twice, it had failed. But this time, it wasn't just survival. It was accountability. And they had only just begun. The morning after the arrest, the city felt different. Not just because of the headlines, but because people were starting to believe something might actually change. At the community center, where Malik had taught cybersecurity classes for years, people gathered. Not out of curiosity, but out of solidarity. Older men who'd been stopped unfairly. Single mothers who'd once feared calling the police. Young people who had felt invisible. Now, they stood together. Not because Malik was famous. Because he had proven that someone could stand up to power, and win. Inside the center, Malik sat at a table surrounded by his team. Tasha, Jared, and Nina looked serious, but energized. Tasha spoke first. We've analyzed Collins's arrest data. He's been manipulating reports for years. Dozens of stops. Most never went to court. Jared added. We cross-referenced the asset forfeiture fund. Money seized from drivers ended up in off-the-books accounts. Collins wasn't working alone. Malik nodded. We expected that. The question is, how deep does this go? Nina pushed a folder across the table. Deeper than we thought. Inside were printed emails. Communications between Collins and Captain Roy Hanley, his direct superior. The messages weren't subtle. Pick your targets carefully. Go for the ones who won't fight back. Make sure the paperwork stays clean. Malik leaned back, exhaling slowly. They built a machine, he said. And it's been running a long time. Meanwhile, at the police department, panic was setting in. Captain Hanley was pacing behind his desk, barking orders. I want every shred of paperwork related to Collins's stops pulled and reviewed. If anything looks bad, make it disappear. An officer hesitated. Sir, the DOJ is already locking down the records. Hanley froze. Then, in a quieter, more dangerous tone. Then we need to control the narrative before they do. He picked up the phone. Call the union and the media contacts. We say Malik Thompson is exploiting this for money. Discredit him. Now. But Hanley had underestimated one thing. Malik wasn't working alone anymore. That afternoon, Malik stood in front of a packed press conference. He didn't want to be there. He didn't like cameras. But this wasn't about him. It was about the people behind him. The community leaders. The families. The honest officers who had come forward in the last 24 hours. Malik cleared his throat. For years, certain members of law enforcement believed they could act without consequences. That they could intimidate, manipulate, and profit at the expense of those who trusted them. He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. But they were wrong. Behind him, Tasha held up a large poster board. On it were the words. Project Falcon exposed. Malik continued. Our independent investigation, now verified by federal authorities, has revealed a system of illegal traffic stops, falsified reports, and misuse of public funds. Camera flashes popped like lightning. "And let me be clear," Malik said. "This isn't about destroying law enforcement. This is about restoring it. About making sure those who serve and protect are held to the same standards as those they police." A reporter called out. "Do you fear retaliation?" Malik smiled slightly. "If I did, I would have stopped a long time ago." The room chuckled, but the undertone was serious. Another reporter asked, "What do you want to say to the people who tried to discredit you?" Malik paused, then spoke slowly. "Thank you." The crowd murmured in confusion. Because every lie, every attempt to silence me, only proved how desperate they were. And desperation is a sign that the truth is winning. That night, as the press conference replayed on every news station, Captain Hanley made one last call. "Get me someone who can fix this." But there was no one left to call. The system he'd built to protect himself, it was crumbling. And the more he tried to hold it together, the faster it slipped through his fingers. Back at his office, Malik sat with his team, reviewing the next steps. Tasha pointed to a new file. "We've received anonymous tips. More officers willing to testify." Jared added. "And someone from the finance department. They're ready to talk about the missing funds." Malik nodded. "Good. We keep going." Nina hesitated. "You know they won't stop, right? They'll keep coming." Malik smiled. "I'm counting on it." He stood and looked out the window, watching the city lights. For too long, they thought silence was safety. That intimidation was power. He turned back to his team. "They know the truth." And across town, in a dark office, Captain Hanley stared at his own reflection in the window. For the first time in years, he didn't see control. He saw fear. Because the man they had dismissed, the man they thought was just another easy target, had become the one thing they couldn't outrun. Accountability. The next morning, the battle lines were clear. The headlines told two different stories. One pushed by Captain Hanley's allies. Tech consultant exploits police investigation for personal gain. The other, spreading rapidly through independent media and trusted community outlets. Whistleblowers step forward. Project Falcon, bigger than expected. But Malik wasn't paying attention to headlines. He was focused on the next move. At the office, Malik gathered with his team. Tasha pointed to the latest reports. The finance department whistleblower confirmed it. The forfeiture funds were routed through a fake non-profit Hanley controls. Jared added. That non-profit then issued training grants, which went straight into personal accounts. Nina leaned in. It's not just Hanley. 2 city officials signed off. This could reach the mayor's office. Malik took a deep breath. They had enough to trigger a citywide investigation. But evidence wasn't enough. They needed public pressure. They needed the people to see what had been hidden. And they needed to move fast, before Hanley made his next play. Meanwhile, at police headquarters, Captain Hanley wasn't sitting idle. In a private meeting, he spoke to the police union president and 2 of the city officials implicated. We hold a press conference, Hanley insisted. We accuse Malik of hacking. Illegal surveillance. Make him the criminal. The union president hesitated. We'll need proof. Hanley smiled coldly. We don't need proof. We need doubt. One of the officials spoke up. And if the DOJ gets ahead of us? Then we're finished anyway, Hanley said flatly. So we fight dirty. That afternoon, Malik's team launched their counterstrike. A public town hall, not behind closed doors, not in legal jargon. A meeting streamed online. Open to the press. Open to the public. Community members packed the auditorium. Some had never trusted the police. Others had once defended them. But now, they were united by betrayal. Malik stood at the podium. He didn't speak like a man seeking revenge. He spoke like a man offering truth. For years, Project Falcon operated under the belief that no one would notice. That victims would stay silent. That data would be ignored. He paused, letting the weight settle. But the victims didn't stay silent. The data didn't disappear. Behind him, a massive screen lit up. Rows of names. Faces. Stories. Real people, wrongfully stopped, arrested, fined. Many of them in the room now. Tasha narrated as the slides changed. This isn't just about Malik. This is about hundreds of lives affected, jobs lost, homes seized, families broken. Jared added. And the money, it went here. The screen changed again. Bank records. Transfers. Signatures. Clear. Unmistakable. The crowd murmured. Voices rising. Shock. Anger. Validation. Malik raised his hand for quiet. I don't want your anger, he said. I want your action. He turned to the cameras streaming live. To anyone watching, this isn't about race. This isn't about anti-police rhetoric. This is about power. And the people who think they can use it without consequence. He pointed to the crowd behind him. Not anymore. Across town, Captain Hanley watched the live stream in his office. His phone buzzed relentlessly, the union, the city officials, his own officers. Panic. Someone knocked at the door. It wasn't just anyone. It was Agent Ramirez. She entered without waiting for permission. We need to talk. Hanley tried to maintain his composure. I'm busy. Not anymore. She placed a folder on his desk. Inside, an official DOJ notice. You are under federal investigation. Effective immediately. Hanley's breath caught. On what grounds? Ramirez smiled faintly. On the grounds that you thought no one was watching. She leaned closer. And you underestimated the wrong man. Back at the town hall, as the meeting concluded, Malik stepped away from the podium. Dozens of people approached him. Some offered thanks. Others shared their own stories. But one man stood apart. An older gentleman, late 60s, dressed simply, weathered hands. I knew your father, he said softly. He always told us, when you see something wrong, you either fix it or you become part of it. Malik smiled, his eyes misting slightly. That's what he taught me, too. The man nodded. Your fight's not just for you. It's for all of us. Malik looked around the room, at the faces filled with hope, determination, courage. I know, he said quietly. And I'm not done yet. But the real twist was coming. Because what Malik didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that someone inside city government had just flipped. A new whistleblower. And the information they carried, it wouldn't just take down a captain. It would bring down the entire department. And maybe more. The next morning, Malik's phone rang at 6:12 a.m. Caller ID, Agent Ramirez. He answered immediately. We have a development, she said. Meet me at the federal building. Bring no one. She didn't explain. She didn't have to. Malik grabbed his bag and headed out. When he arrived, Ramirez led him to a small, windowless conference room. 2 other agents were already inside. And at the table, nervously wringing her hands, sat a woman, late 40s, brown hair, glasses. A city employee badge hung from her neck. Ramirez closed the door. This is Sandra Mills. Finance Department. She's the whistleblower who reached out last night. Malik nodded calmly, though his heart was racing. Sandra spoke quickly. I wasn't part of it. I didn't know what I was signing. But I found the records. Captain Hanley, he wasn't just rerouting forfeiture funds. He was moving city budget money, too. Ramirez slid a thick folder toward Malik. Sandra continued, her voice shaking. I traced over $2.3 million, money allocated for community outreach, housing assistance, police diversity training, all funneled into fake nonprofits. And those nonprofits, she swallowed hard. Owned by Hanley's family. And some, by 2 city council members. Malik leaned forward. You sure? I have documents. Emails. Bank transfers. And I've already secured backup copies. Ramirez added. We verified enough to open a federal corruption case. Malik closed his eyes for a moment. The corruption went deeper than he feared. But deep corruption is fragile. Because it needs too many people to stay silent. And silence had just been broken. Meanwhile, at police headquarters, Captain Hanley was unraveling. News of Sandra's whistleblower complaint had already reached him. Officers whispered in hallways. Some avoided his gaze entirely. He stormed into the briefing room. Listen up, he barked. No one talks to the press. No one talks to the DOJ. If anyone leaks information, you will be terminated immediately. The room was silent. Not obedient, silent like people calculating whether to stay or run. Hanley felt it. The loyalty he depended on for years, it was gone. Replaced by fear. And fear was contagious. At Malik's office, the team gathered. Tasha scanned the new evidence. This is huge. Jared whistled. We can take down the department. Maybe even the council. Nina frowned. But that's not without risk. If we go public, they'll come after us harder than ever. Malik nodded. I know. Tasha looked him in the eye. What's the play? Malik took a breath. We go public. But not like before. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling in every connection we have. Journalists. Community leaders. Former officers ready to speak. We're not dropping a bombshell, he smiled faintly. We're starting a reckoning. That evening, the plan went into motion. First, a leak. A detailed report, released anonymously to multiple news outlets. Bank records. Emails. Testimonies. It exposed not just Hanley and Collins, but the council members who'd signed off on the fraudulent nonprofits. Social media lit up within hours. Project Falcon trended nationwide. Then came the press conference. But this time, Malik didn't stand alone. He stood beside Sandra Mills. Beside Tasha. Jared. Nina. Beside officers who had refused to participate in illegal stops. Beside community leaders. Beside victims. Malik spoke clearly. His voice, steady. For too long, power has hidden behind titles and uniforms. For too long, those who spoke out were silenced. He paused, scanning the crowd of reporters. But not this time. This time, those who abuse their power, will answer for it. Camera flashes erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Is the mayor involved? Will there be arrests? Do you fear for your safety? Malik smiled grimly. I'm not afraid. Because I'm not alone. He gestured to the people behind him. We're not just fighting corruption. We're reclaiming accountability. That night, the city shook. The DOJ announced formal charges against Captain Hanley. An arrest warrant was issued. The 2 city council members were placed under investigation. But the biggest shock. Several police officers, including Sergeant Collins, flipped. They agreed to testify in exchange for reduced sentences. The system Hanley had built to protect himself. It was collapsing from within. And Malik had done what no one thought possible. He hadn't just exposed corruption. He'd turned fear into action. Silence into voices. Oppression into momentum. But Malik knew, it wasn't over. Not yet. Power doesn't give up quietly. And the most dangerous players, they hadn't revealed themselves yet. By the following morning, Malik's name wasn't just in headlines anymore. It was on the lips of every city official. Every officer. Every citizen who had once felt powerless. The reckoning had begun. But so had the counterattack. At City Hall, behind closed doors, powerful men gathered in panic. Not just police. Not just council members. Businessmen. Contractors. Political donors. All with ties to the web Malik had just exposed. One voice, sharp and cold, cut through the room. We underestimated him. That was our mistake. Now, we can't afford to play defense anymore. Another replied. What do you suggest? We discredit him, fully. Dig into his past. Find anything. Or create something. And if that fails, then we end this, quietly. The room fell silent. For the first time, they weren't discussing damage control. They were discussing survival. Meanwhile, Malik and his team gathered for another strategy session. Tasha laid out new intel. Since the press conference, we've had anonymous threats, emails, voicemails. Someone even tried to access our cloud servers. Jared added. The leaks traced back to an off-the-books contractor hired by the city. Nina frowned. They're not just trying to silence us legally anymore. Malik nodded grimly. I expected this. The question is, how far are they willing to go? As if on cue, his phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. We see you. Back down or pay the price. Tasha looked over his shoulder. That's not a bluff. Malik pocketed the phone. It's fear. He turned to the team. We double security protocols. No one works alone. And we keep the momentum going. He pointed to the files on the table. Because fear is a sign we're winning. That evening, Malik received another call from Agent Ramirez. We've picked up chatter. They're not just trying to discredit you anymore. I know, Malik replied. We believe a private security group has been contracted. Unofficial. Untraceable. Let me guess, Malik said, to make the problem, go away. We're increasing protection, Ramirez said firmly. You and your team. Malik shook his head. I appreciate that. But I won't be driven underground. That's what they want. Then be ready. They're desperate now. So am I, Malik replied. Desperate to finish this. The next morning, the attack came, but not with guns. With lies. A major news outlet ran an exclusive story. Federal whistleblower under investigation for fraud and tax evasion. The article was filled with distortions, twisted facts, false allegations. Anonymous sources claimed Malik had manipulated Project Falcon data for personal gain. Within minutes, social media exploded. Half the comments were outrage. Half were confusion. Is this true? Another fake hero? Typical corruption. Tasha slammed her fist on the desk. They're trying to destroy your credibility before the DOJ can bring formal charges against the rest of them. Jared added. If they succeed, public support could collapse. The witnesses might back out. Malik remained calm. We won't let them control the narrative. He picked up his phone and made a call. It's time. That afternoon, Malik held another press conference. But this one was different. He didn't speak from a podium. He stood beside Agent Ramirez. Beside the whistleblowers. Beside the victims. And beside new allies. State prosecutors. Civil rights attorneys. Even former police officers who had once feared speaking out. Malik spoke first. The lies being spread about me today were predictable. Power doesn't give up quietly. It tries to poison truth before truth can finish its work. He paused. But here's what they didn't expect. He gestured to Ramirez, who stepped forward. The Department of Justice has reviewed every allegation, she said. Not only are they false, but the so-called sources quoted in the article have direct financial ties to the very officials now under federal indictment. A reporter shouted. Do you have proof? Ramirez held up a thick file. Every page. Camera flashes lit up the room. Malik continued. The smear campaign wasn't an attack on me. It was an attack on accountability. On every person who dared to say, enough. The room fell silent. For those who still doubt me, Malik added. I don't ask for your trust. I ask for your attention. Watch what happens next. And what happened next shook the city to its core. Federal agents executed warrants at police headquarters. At council members' homes. The private security firm that had threatened Malik. Dozens arrested. Hundreds of records seized. Even the news outlet that ran the smear piece. Their editor was subpoenaed. And the story collapsed. That night, as the city processed the tidal wave of arrests, Malik stood alone on his office balcony. He looked out at the lights of a community he had once tried to protect quietly. Now, that was no longer possible. He had become the face of a movement. Not because he wanted to. But because silence had never been an option. Tasha joined him. We won't sleep much tonight, she said softly. Malik smiled faintly. That's fine. They won't either. And behind him, on the office wall, the original Project Falcon blueprint still hung. But someone had crossed out the word project. And written a new one above it. Justice. By the next morning, the city wasn't just watching anymore. It was waiting. Waiting to see if accountability was real. Or if power would find a way to survive, as it always had before. Malik woke to dozens of new messages. Some were from strangers offering support. Some were from people he knew. Business owners, church leaders, even former officers thanking him. But one stood out, a name he hadn't expected. Lieutenant Rachel Pierce. An officer still inside the department. Her message was simple. We need to talk. I have evidence that changes everything. At a quiet diner on the edge of town, Malik met Lieutenant Pierce that afternoon. She looked tired, but determined. I've seen enough corruption in my time, she said. But what Hanley did, it went deeper than even you found. She slid a flash drive across the table. Body cam footage. From Collins. From other stops. Footage that was deleted from the official system. But I kept copies. Malik frowned. How bad? Her voice was cold. Bad enough to prove Hanley didn't just target people like you. He targeted officers who wouldn't play along. She leaned in. He had whistleblowers silenced. One officer's accident wasn't an accident. And the private security firm? They didn't just threaten you. They were used to intimidate us. Malik's breath caught. This wasn't just a corruption case. It was a criminal conspiracy. And now, they had proof. Back at his office, Malik's team gathered. Tasha loaded the flash drive. The footage showed more than just illegal stops. It showed Hanley ordering the destruction of evidence. Threatening officers. And most damning of all, a recorded meeting where he spoke openly about the council members. They'll cover for us. They've done it before. They owe me. Jared's hands clenched into fists. Nina whispered. This is it. This takes down the entire operation. Malik nodded. It takes down more than that. He looked at the screen. This takes down the illusion that silence keeps you safe. The next day, Malik met with Agent Ramirez. She reviewed the footage. This is more than enough for federal conspiracy charges, she said. Not just against Hanley and the council. Against everyone who protected them. She paused. But if we move now, the city's leadership will be gutted. There will be backlash. Malik nodded. That's the risk. Ramirez studied him. You sure you're ready for this? Malik smiled faintly. I wasn't ready when they pulled me over. I wasn't ready when they tried to smear me. I wasn't ready when they tried to intimidate my team. His expression hardened. But I'm ready now. The next 48 hours unfolded like a storm. Federal agents raided the police headquarters. Hanley was arrested at his home. Council members, taken into custody. Businessmen and contractors named in the conspiracy, indicted. The private security firm, shut down. And for the first time in the city's history, multiple officers filed lawsuits against their own department, citing harassment and intimidation. The walls had finally fallen. And in their place, the truth stood tall. At a press conference that evening, Malik didn't speak alone. Lieutenant Pierce stood beside him. So did the whistleblowers. The victims. Even the community leaders who had once doubted him. Malik addressed the crowd. This fight was never just about me. It was about what happens when power forgets it serves the people, not the other way around. He paused. When they stopped me that night, they thought they'd found another easy target. Someone they could silence. He looked out at the cameras. But every person they silenced, became another voice in this movement. And today, those voices are louder than ever. The crowd erupted in applause. Back at headquarters, the interim police chief, a respected veteran brought in by the federal monitors, spoke to his remaining officers. I know some of you are scared, he said. But fear can either paralyze you, or push you to do better. He paused. And starting today, we will do better. That night, Malik returned to his office. The streets were quieter, not silent, but calmer. Tasha, Jared, and Nina were already there, reviewing the final reports. You did it, Tasha said softly. Malik shook his head. We did it. Nina smiled. What now? Malik looked out the window at the city skyline. Now we make sure this never happens again. He glanced at the whiteboard, where the word justice still hung. And beneath it, someone had added a new phrase. Accountability is just the beginning. But deep down, Malik knew something else. The system had been exposed, but systems rebuild. And power has a way of crawling back in the shadows. He wasn't naive. He was prepared. And when the next fight came, he'd be ready. Because no one, not ever again, would mistake him for someone they could overlook. The headlines were no longer about the arrests. They were about the aftermath. City shaken by police corruption scandal. More arrests expected. Federal oversight begins as community demands reform. Whistleblowers credit black tech consultant for exposing decade-long abuse. Malik should have felt relieved, but he didn't. Because exposing corruption was one thing. Rebuilding trust, that was something else entirely. At his office, Malik gathered his team. Tasha reviewed the latest reports. The Department of Justice has arrested 23 officials so far. Hanley, Collins, and the council members are facing federal charges. Jared added. Community response has been mostly positive. Donations are flooding into the legal defense fund for the victims. Nina frowned. But we've also had threats. Some from former officers. Some anonymous. Malik nodded. I expected that. He glanced at the whiteboard. Justice. Accountability is just the beginning. The fight continues. We've torn down the old structure, Malik said. Now they'll try to stop us from building a new one. Tasha leaned forward. So, what's our next move? Before Malik could answer, his phone buzzed. A new text message. Unknown number. We're not finished. You ruined lives. Time to pay. Jared's eyes narrowed. They're getting desperate. Malik stayed calm. And desperate people make mistakes. The next morning, Malik met with Agent Ramirez. She was waiting outside the federal building, arms crossed, a folder in hand. We've traced the threats, she said. They're not just random. She opened the folder. A group of former officers, ones who avoided indictment. They've organized. They call themselves the Shield. Malik frowned. A counter-movement. Exactly, Ramirez confirmed. They're blaming you for the arrests, for the loss of their pensions, for the department's public disgrace. She paused. And they're planning something. What kind of something? We're not sure yet. But we believe they're targeting you, and anyone who helped bring them down. Malik exhaled slowly. So they're trying to finish what they started. Ramirez nodded. But this time, we'll be ready. That evening, Malik gathered his team again. Tasha had already reinforced their security systems. Jared monitored online chatter. Nina coordinated with community leaders and honest officers still inside the department. But Malik had a different plan. We're not just going to defend ourselves, he said. We're going to confront them. Tasha raised an eyebrow. How? Malik smiled slightly. We make it impossible for them to hide. 2 days later, the community held a public forum. A large auditorium filled with hundreds of people, victims, activists, journalists, and officers, both current and former. Malik stood at the podium. This isn't just a story about corruption anymore, he began. It's a story about what comes after. He gestured to the crowd. Accountability means more than arrests. It means standing together to protect what we've built. And that includes facing those who want to drag us backward. He paused. And to those who call themselves the Shield, I say this. You will not silence us. Not now. Not ever. The crowd erupted in applause. Camera flashes sparked like lightning. But Malik wasn't done. Tonight, he continued. We're announcing the formation of a new organization, one that will work with federal oversight to ensure this never happens again. He revealed a banner. Community Alliance for Transparency and Reform. The crowd cheered. But in the back row, unseen by most, 2 men stood. Former officers, faces tight with anger. One pulled out a phone. It's time, he whispered. That night, as Malik left the forum, a black SUV followed his car. Tasha, riding shotgun, noticed immediately. We've got a tail. Malik nodded. I see it. Jared's voice came through the speakerphone. Stay calm. Ramirez's team is monitoring the area. Malik drove steadily. The SUV kept its distance, until they reached a quiet street near Malik's office. Then it accelerated. Blocked their path. 2 men stepped out. Both wore civilian clothes. But Malik recognized them instantly. Former officers, the same ones Ramirez had warned about. One held a metal baton. The other carried zip ties. Tasha reached for her phone, but Malik stopped her. Wait. He stepped out of the car calmly. Faced the men without fear. "You don't want to do this," he said. The taller man sneered. "You destroyed our lives." "No," Malik replied. "Your choices destroyed your lives." The shorter man advanced. "Time to shut you up for good." But before they could move, spotlights flared. Federal agents swarmed in. Ramirez's voice echoed. "Federal agents. Drop your weapons." The men froze. One dropped the baton. The other tried to run, but it was too late. Within seconds, they were cuffed and on the ground. Malik remained still. Ramirez approached. "Good work staying calm." "They were always going to make a move," Malik said. "Better here." "Better now." Ramirez nodded. "And now, they're done." The next morning, the final headlines hit the news. Plot to intimidate community leader foiled by federal agents. Former officers behind threats arrested. City moves forward with reforms. For the first time, Malik allowed himself a quiet moment of relief. The old system had tried to silence him. To punish him. To scare him into submission. And it had failed. Not because he was powerful. But because he refused to back down. Because he knew something the corrupt never understood. The people they underestimate are often the ones who bring them down. For the first time in months, the city woke up to headlines that didn't scream scandal or corruption. Instead, they spoke of change. Community unites after major police reforms announced. New oversight board formed. Citizens lead the way. Malik Thompson declines official position, stays independent watchdog. Malik stood outside the courthouse where it had all begun. The building looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. The old fear that had once clung to those steps was gone. Replaced by something new. Respect. Hope. And the knowledge that power, when held accountable, could actually serve the people again. Inside, the new Civilian Oversight Board was holding its first public meeting. Tasha, Jared, and Nina sat in the audience. Lieutenant Pierce was now a board advisor. Sandra Mills, the brave finance whistleblower, had been named Director of Transparency. Dozens of citizens filled the seats. Some victims. Some activists. Some just people who finally believed their voices mattered. Malik didn't go inside. He had no desire to sit behind a desk or pass resolutions. That wasn't his role. He preferred to be the eyes watching from the outside. The reminder that even reformed systems need accountability. As he turned to leave, Agent Ramirez approached. "You sure you want to stay on the sidelines?" she asked, smiling. Malik chuckled. "Sidelines? I don't think so. I'm just moving to a different part of the field." She nodded. "I figured. We've had calls from other cities. They want to consult with you. Learn how you did what you did here." Malik's smile faded slightly. "It wasn't just me." "I know," she said. "But you showed them it was possible." She handed him a small folder. "One city's already started seeing the same patterns you found here. Similar abuses. If you're willing to help." Malik took the folder. Flipped it open. More data. More names. More people being underestimated. "Of course," he said. "The fight continues." That evening, Malik joined his team back at the office. But it didn't feel like an office anymore. It felt like a movement's headquarters. Tasha had updated the whiteboard. Justice. Accountability is just the beginning. The fight continues. And beneath it, in bold letters. Never underestimate anyone. They spent the night reviewing new reports. New whistleblowers. New communities needing guidance.